What is up, YouTube? Today I'm going to be going over the Buffalo Bills team review. Yesterday we did the Kansas City Chiefs. Today we're doing everyone's favorite in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills. It seems like everybody thinks they're going to the Super Bowl easily. They're just going to walk over the competition, and I kind of think differently. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to give them the player ratings at head coach, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. Oh, also offensive line, of course. So we'll get straight into it with Sean McDermott at head coach. I gave him an 8.75 out of 10. I really like what he's done with Josh Allen. I mean, these last 4 years, Josh Allen went from a bottom 10 quarterback to a top 5 quarterback pretty quickly. It's really amazing. They lose Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator, which hurts a lot, honestly. But I think they've developed Allen enough to the point where it won't matter as much as it would have 2 years ago. But yeah, Sean McDermott, one of the best coaches in the game right now, probably top 7-ish, so that's why I gave him the high rating there. And when we move on to Josh Allen, he's my QB4 in the NFL right now. So I have him getting a 9.5. I think he's the best dual threat quarterback in the league. You can make an argument for guys like Lamar Jackson, but I just don't think Lamar or Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts have anywhere near the throwing capacity of a guy like Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's arm is just miles better, and his running game is just completely different in the way that he's a monster truck out there. Like, you can't tackle the dude. He's way better on 3rd and 3 than any of the guys we just mentioned before, and better around the goal line as well. So Josh Allen's going to pop off again this year for sure, but we already know about the strengths of this offense. Let's get to the weaknesses, the glaring weaknesses at running back. I gave them a 4.5 at running back, and that's because they have just nothing. There's no stud on that team, and there's no depth on that team. I mean, Zach Moss is literally done. He's just completely out of the picture. Devin Singletary has been a garbage can for his entire career until about the last 6 games of last year. So, yes, people have this kind of construed image of him in their head where they think he's a great running back now. I am not on board with that. I think he's just very, very average, if not below average. But James Cook is kind of that lone bright spot. They just drafted him. He's supposed to be that Alvin Kamara type of scat back. Maybe he takes some early down work as the season progresses. But at the start, he's just going to be passing downs, which is fine. I think he's talented. But obviously, there's only very few offenses that can kind of center around a scat back. The Bills are one of those teams that you don't really need a running game, kind of like the Chiefs, where the quarterback is part of that running game, and the quarterback is just such a large part of the offense where, like, the passing attack is just so dominant, Like, they could really make up for this lack of running backs. But when you compare this core of running backs to the rest of the league, it's very below par. Receivers, on the other hand, are a little above average. I give them a 7.5 out of 10. This is mainly carried by Stephon Diggs, a top 5 receiver in the NFL. I think Gabe Davis is definitely overrated now after he had that 200-yard, 4-touchdown game, for sure. People, especially in fantasy football, drafting this dude inside the top 45 picks. I mean, Gabriel Davis is the most average receiver you'll see in a while. I mean, he's your typical Z receiver, doesn't have the best, man ratings when it comes to beating man and press. He doesn't have a great route tree. He's just a typical deep threat in a Josh Allen offense where Josh Allen will get a lot of, those big chunk plays by just rolling out of the pocket, shedding a tackle, and then how is a quarterback or a cornerback supposed to hang with these receivers when Josh Allen's taking a snap for like 10 seconds, So there'll be those big plays where Gabe Davis does his thing. But as an actual receiver, I don't think he's very special. Jamison Crowder they brought in to replace Cole Beasley. I think that's going to be fine. I think he's slightly worse than Cole Beasley, but he's been pretty consistent his whole career. But I'm really excited to see what Isaiah McKenzie does, as he is currently winning that training camp battle for the slot position. We've seen him against the Patriots and some of these other teams where it's like they specifically game plan for McKenzie to completely take advantage of defensive mismatches, which I love to see. I hope McKenzie can be more of a staple of this offense, as he's very, very explosive, probably the most explosive player on that team. They've used him well in the past. Let's just see if they can transition that to a full-time role. Now, when we move on to the tight end, they have Dawson Knox and O.J. Howard. I gave this core a 7. I think O.J. is definitely not as, washed as people think he is. I think he's got a little bit left in the tank. He's still pretty young. But people love Dawson Knox. I'm a little bit lower on him than most people, mainly because, like, as an actual tight end, mainly because he's really only a red zone threat. I mean, you see guys like Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, Waller really dominate the middle of the fields and have a lot of yak yards and stuff like that. Dawson Knox basically just, he lines up out wide a lot. And he's good at it, for sure. He's like a big receiver, but he doesn't dominate the middle of the field at all. He's a red zone guy. That's how he made his name, catching a ton of TDs. But like in between the 20s, he's relatively pedestrian. You don't see him as much as you'd like to. So if he can improve there, this offense could be a lot better. may run some more 2 tight end sets this year if they really don't like Gabe Davis and Jameson Crowder. If they're really struggling at those positions, they may just do Diggs and whoever and then have the 2 tight ends in there. So I don't mind that. Moving into the O-line is definitely the biggest weakness on this offense. I give it a 4.5. Currently, they're ranked 20th coming to the season by PFF. Last year, they weren't amazing either. But when you factor in these O-lines, I mean, it matters a lot. But for a team that barely runs the ball and has such a mobile quarterback, O-line is kind of the least of their worries. Like, yes, it would be nice if they had, what Tom Brady has, but they can make up for it. Josh Allen is big, strong enough, fast enough to roll out of the pocket. He can throw on the run like anybody. So a 4.5 for the O-line is not going to kill this offense for sure. Moving on to the defense, I give the defense a 9.5. I think their secondary is probably top 2 in the league behind the Packers. I mean, they just got Von Miller to really bolster up this pass rush. This team looks really solid from a defensive perspective, and people have a construed image from that Chiefs game where they think this defense is trash. That's just not the case. They were very good last year. It's just everybody looks horrible against the Chiefs, It's just Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. I mean, what are you going to do? Everyone has those breakdown games. You can't be perfect. So I think this defense is very solid. As you guys know, I weight head coach, quarterback, and defense more than the other positions because I feel like they have a bigger impact on the game. So when all is said and done, I give the Bills an 8.6 rating out of 10. I think they're going to be a solid playoff team. I don't think they're the Super Bowl contender that everyone thinks they are. I think there's some other teams I prefer over them. But Bills are still a great team. They're very, very fun to watch. And if you guys want to see all the other reviews I do of these teams, drop a follow, drop a comment, drop a like. Let me know what team I should be doing next. And yeah, guys, I love making these videos for you. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.